Hey there, Dango Stu here. Today's video is about whether it's bad luck to change the name of a boat, and it's proudly sponsored by MarineEngine.com. I think it's about time we gave the trawler a name, and I think it kind of flows on well from the banana fiasco. There's always a bit of a theory behind these superstitions. For example, with the bananas, there's a few theories. One is that when a ship sank, the bananas floated, so you saw bananas and presumed that was the problem. Another is that bananas give off a gas, ethylene, something like that. Can't remember, I should look it up. But it causes other fruits to ripen, so you can actually have your whole sort of cargo spoil if you've got bananas on board. Through to things like banana skins actually rotting the timbers of boats as well, all this kind of stuff. But looking into it, you know, there's a few common things with all these superstitions. I don't think there's any denying that sailors are a superstitious lot in general, and generally superstitions arise when you don't have a lot of control over a situation. You know, when things are sort of in the lap of the gods, you do whatever you can to sort of appease those gods and make sure you have a safe journey if you can't do anything directly to control it. So I think that kind of explains fundamentally why there are so many superstitions around boating. To me, I was just reading recently The Wreck of the Sydney Cove, a book about, oddly enough, the wreck of the Sydney Cove. And there's a point quite early on in the book where they're heading down the west coast of Australia. They haven't seen stars for ages, so they don't really have any idea of their latitude. And at some point, they need to turn to port and come along the south side of Australia. If they turn too early, they hit the coast of Australia. If they turn too late, they end up in the iceberg field of Antarctica. And so you can see they get some sense from even just the nature of the wind, the temperatures. They take all the clues they can. They're doing the best they can to use all their skills, their seamanship skills, to determine when to turn. But with just a month of cloudy weather, they don't really have a direct fix with a sextant. So at some point they turn, and it is a leap of faith. So I thought that was a really good example of why people feel superstitious. You know, they've got all these techniques, but at the end of the day, they just had to go for it without any accurate information. Didn't have GPS, etc. So specifically when it comes to renaming a boat, the idea is that by renaming a boat you were trying to cheat or deceive Poseidon or Neptune. Poseidon was one of the Olympians in ancient Greek legend and myth, and Neptune is kind of the Roman equivalent. Now, in order not to incur the wrath of Poseidon or Neptune, it was important that this ledger of the deep was kept up to date accurately. And the ledger of the deep is a ledger that has a list of all the vessels floating on the seas. The idea was that if you change the name of a vessel without notifying Poseidon and Neptune and allowing the ledger of the deep to be updated accurately, the idea was you were trying to pull a bit of a swifty and do a bit of a dodgy and go off the record. Another interesting theory is that the changing of the name of a boat was generally an indication that a transaction had taken place, that the boat had been sold and that a new owner was giving the boat a new name. And of course this involved a bit of tax changing hands, so by not changing the name of the boat you could avoid anyone knowing the boat had been sold and therefore paying the appropriate tax. Slightly more down-to-earth theory. Before we get on and do the ceremony to deregister the old name of my vessel with the Ledger of the Deep, there's another example of this which is quite famous, of a boat being renamed and sinking. And one thing they did wrong, the boat, allow me to read this, the original one was SS Lake Frona, was renamed Brigadier General M.G. Zelinsky, but it sank, but it still had Lake Frona on the ship's bell. So one of the really important things during the denaming ceremony is that you take every reference from the old name off the boat. The bell, the life rafts, the logbooks, everything has to be gone completely before you can begin. The ceremony I chose to follow I got from a website called boatnames.com.au, which is where I also bought the lettering to put on the boat. So I'll put a link in the description there if you want to see the text of the full ceremony for your boat. Anyway, a few guys from the channel kindly came down to make sure it wasn't too much of a lonely affair, and we started with the ceremony for deregistering the old name.
O mighty and great ruler of the seas and oceans, to whom all ships and we who venture upon your vast domain are required to pay homage, implore you in your graciousness to expunge for all time from your records and recollection the name Julie II, which has ceased to be an entity in your kingdom. As proof thereof, we submit this ingot bearing her name to be corrupted through your powers, forever to be purged from the sea. Peter, may you do the honours. Into the wild ocean, Pete.
Nice.
In grateful acknowledgement of your munificence and dispensation, we offer these libations to your majesty and your court. Pour at least half a bottle... Oh no, you don't read that bit. we need Coopers.
We need the Coopers.
Don't make a mess.
No,
it's
not
drinkable.
quite champagne,
Remember,
is it?
it's drinkable.
East. Needs to be half bottle. West.
And then drink it.
And then drink it. Cowbunga.
Before we could do the naming ceremony, of course, we need to put the name on the boat. So we started by cleaning the transom.
The trouble is, everything's rounded and curved. There's no obvious edge to hook onto.
You should have told me. I could have brought someone who does this for a living.
Oh, really?
My partner does this for a living.
Well, there you
Get her
go.
on the blower.
No, she's with child.
And then we have to, yeah, right. So centre with the M, and then the name has to go below it. So we have to tape that up.
You'll make sure it's level.
Is the boat level?
No.
Yeah, you're in trouble.
Go out in the water like lopsided.
You're going to pick up points of reference. You're just going to go no distance from...
Further west.
But
The trouble is,
from the
okay,
outside.
so we have to go.
so is that.
So we need this part of the end, but we have to be kind of up. We need the name.
Yeah,
the
up
home
there.
port
Yeah,
below.
that's better. Got to have it fairly high.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, that's where they come from.
Let's jump in here and have a look.
Well, the trouble is the boat's
Yeah, it's okay.
I don't think a screw level's too much use to you.
So what we need to do, according to their instructions, was we need to get it all off again. So they said put a bit of tape behind it, like here, and then do a pencil mark across everything, and that becomes your reference when you go back on.
We need to walk back over there somewhere and have a look and see does it look wrong.
Yeah, you can always tell from a distance, can't you? Can you give me another bit of tape? Who's got the water away?
It's on the floor.
Stuart, can you give me some tape, please? Yeah, no worries, mate.
So what do you measure? All over it. On, you can shimmy it slightly. It's wet. It's funny how it just kind of like gets mildly off and then more off.
Yeah, I know. I think it's because it's actually tight for the first time. I think it was.
You've wet the paper on the outside too, I think.
Instructions say.
Yeah.
Well, has failed.
Wet the back with Coopers.
I probably actually. Yeah.
Which I do. What is the K?
I need a fart.
Yeah. Alright.
That's number 2.
So we just fake this and do a jointy angle and no one will.
We had a crack at putting the home port on. It went a bit wrong, but we decided just to move on and do the naming ceremony anyway, so we'll pick up from there again.
O mighty and great ruler of the seas and oceans, to whom all ships and we who venture upon your vast domain are required to pay homage, implore you in your graciousness to take upon your records and recollection this worthy vessel hereafter for all time known as Renko, guarding her with your mighty arm and trident and ensuring her safe and rapid passage throughout her journeys within your realm. In appreciation of your munificence, dispensation, and in honour of your greatness, we offer these libations to your majesty and your court. Our chosen libation for Neptune, Poseidon, whatever. West to east this time. It says half a bottle, but that's a waste.
Now drink it. Drink it, Freddie. Drink it. Fabulous.
There you go. Last round.
Alright, because it was all a bit chaotic during the actual naming ceremony with so many people, we had a lot of fun, but chaotic. And so what I'll do now is I'll show you again putting the home port back on, but in a bit more detail. Okay, step one is to clean the area that you're putting the stickers onto with something like a bit of window cleaner. Stickers come in a cardboard roll, so they're a bit curled up when you get them, and you need to lay them out for a while. They actually recommend about 24 hours, and the excellent advice they give you is lay them out somewhere where they're flat, and don't make it somewhere where kids and pets and whatever can get to them and you find they're, you know, chewed up or whatever when you come in the next day. So I'm going to lay these out for a little while, probably not 24 hours, but it'll make it a lot easier to put them on. I got all this lettering from Boat Names Australia. It's also where I got the information on the boat renaming ceremony from, so I'll put a link to that in the description. But the instructions go through pretty much everything, which is awesome. It includes things like going around sort of chines on a boat, depending on the style of boat. So you really need to kind of read through it, figure out what applies to your boat, what doesn't. They also give you a little squeegee with the set to apply them, which is cool. Saves you finding your own. Probably the trickiest part of all this is just getting it all marked up so that they're straight and level, you know. What I'm going to do now is grab a tape measure, get myself a horizontal baseline. I think that's the most important thing. If I get that first, then I can find the center line of the boat, find the center line of the lettering, get it in position. Once it's there, I just want to run a little bit of a pencil line across the backing of the stickers onto the hull. Then when I take all that sort of tape that I used to mark it up off, I can then sort of make sure it goes back in the old position it was in, stick it down. This 2-pack paint's quite glossy. When I did the top here, I actually drew on it with a Sharpie and it came off alright because it's such a clean, glossy surface. So I might actually even do the same here. That should be a pretty straight baseline for us now, but what I found when we were doing the original lot during the naming ceremony was that by just heading out to the wharf and looking from a bit of a distance, you get a much better idea of whether it's straight or not. So let's do that.
Alright, that doesn't look too bad to me. The end bit of the tape, you know, falls off a little bit, but that's after the line I'd marked. What I've got now is the base of the letters sitting level with the top of this tape. So once again, actually I'll flatten that out with some more tape, but I'll go and have a look from a distance again. Alright, doesn't look too bad. I'm just going to check it left to right. So the lettering itself, 760 millimeters across. So what's that, 330, 380? So this is the center, so it actually needs to come across this way a bit. Okay, it's kind of weird in that it looks actually too far left, even though by my calculations that is actually centered. So I think we might need to dance to the music a little bit. I may not have the Renko writing centered properly, but I think I'd rather center on that than center on the boat at this stage, so at least they line up to each other. Let's go check that. The main name is not centered, it's off to the right. This is kind of a product of us all having beers and doing it together. Gotta say, this is one of those jobs you're probably better off doing either on your own or with, say, one other person. We had fun doing it, but definitely accuracy suffers with, you know, the chaos. But what I think will look better is having the home port centered on the name rather than centered on the boat. Now that is where it is. So this is the center of this writing, so I'm going to have this centered on the N. And also just to confirm, so this is 1230, so if we say 615, yeah, the center of this N is the center of the name. Alright, I think that looks pretty good. It's not 100% centered on the transom, but at least it's level and it's centered to itself, so that's the way I'm going to run. Now what I need to do is remove all this tape, so I'm just going to make some marks across the paper onto the transom, and then we can line those up later. Okay, now we're up to the application stage. This boat does have a smooth hull. It's the transom, it's not a chine surface. Okay, let's take all our tape off. There are definitely a few ways you can go with this next stage. I found doing the main name, the easiest thing for me to do was peel the whole backing off and sort of get it in position. It's not a huge graphic, this one, so I think I'll be fine doing that. Another option is to peel half it off, cut it, get it in position, peel the rest as you go. To be honest with you, I think I'm just going to peel the whole backing off, get it in position. But before we do that, we need to wet down the area that it's going on, and we do that using water with just sort of 2 or 3 drops of washing up detergent in it. Go really slowly and carefully when you're peeling the backing off these letters. There's tape wrapped around it to stop it coming off, so you've got to get rid of that first. So as you peel it, you see the letters stay on the other side. This vinyl is relatively thin. It's, you know, it's more than up to the job once it's in place, but you just got to be really careful not to tear it during this phase. Okay, now it's on, we've got our little marks lined up again. Then from the centre here, I'm just going to use the little squeegee to get any bubbles out. Once I'd peeled the backing off the decals, I sprayed the hull with this water and soap solution, but I also sprayed the sticky side of the decals. It's fine to have it relatively wet because that's what allows you to sort of put it on and do the fine positioning and squeegee all that sort of excess fluid out. So don't be shy with that. Okay, now that's on, going to let it sit for about 30 minutes, then we'll peel the backing off. So as you can see, it's pretty straightforward to do it yourself. Really the hardest part's just getting it set up, getting it centered, getting it level. Take your time doing that, the rest of it's pretty straightforward.
One thing I didn't show at this point is that, as I did with the main name of the boat, spraying the paper just before you peel it off, the back of the paper can actually make it easier to peel off as well. So it's all in the instructions, but it's something I didn't mention this time round. Okay, the boat's now officially renamed to Renko. You're probably wondering what that means. Some of you probably know. It's just the name of the main character from a series of Martin Cruz Smith novels that I really like, so that's where it came from. Okay, this weekend is the Sydney Boat Show, so I'm going to be at the Sydney Boat Show Saturday and Sunday. I've actually got a music gig I'm playing Saturday night, so I might not be there super late on the Saturday, probably get away 4 or 5 o'clock, but we'll be there most of Saturday and Sunday. I'll be at the Ocean Solutions stand again, the same as in the Brisbane Boat Show, so if you feel like swinging by and saying good day, it'd be great to see you. Then next week I'm getting back into actually working on my boat. Also, I've actually got the cranes booked now. The next high tide turned out not to be to the end of the month, so I've got it booked in for the 30th, the end of the month. It's actually only a few days before I fly off to the US, so that's slightly concerning, but I'll get Dave and Arn to keep an eye on it while I'm away. And, you know, a couple of days is more than long enough to check for any leaks and things. So what it means is we may get the engine back before it goes, we may not. I don't really mind either way, because it'll be Rob who's craning it in on the land and Rob who'll be craning it in on the water, and he's saying makes no difference to him, totally 50-50. So we'll see. I think we'll have the engine back before then. I'll certainly have it back from the engineers. It's just whether I get things like the supercharger serviced and all the ancillary things back on, ready to be put in the boat or not. We'll see. Otherwise, I'll put the engine back in when I get back from the US, which will be, so going forward September, so it'll be October by then, so dragging on. Anyway, if I don't see you at the boat show this weekend, I will catch you next week. See ya.